Hey, what's up everyone? So Charles here with another React tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to cover React Context API and the use context hook. So when do we use the context API? We make use of the context API when we have some form of global state, and good examples of global state is authentication. So when we want the user to be accessible from any component, and then the theme, when we want the theme to be also accessible from any component. Also, we can make use of the context API when we have some data that need to be accessible at different nesting levels. And in the example app that we'll be using in this particular tutorial, we will be having such kind of data. So we'll take a look at it later on. Now, generally, we make use of the context API and the use context hook to manage the global state. And a common way of managing state in React is by using Redux, okay? So Redux is so popular in managing the global state, and you might ask yourself, should you use context or should you use Redux? And the simple answer is, if your app is small or medium level, context will be enough. But if your app is very large, like let's say Facebook or Twitter, a very large application, which most of the time you'll not be working on, you can make use of Redux, okay? But what you should do is that you should like learn both and then go with the one that you feel comfortable with. But nowadays I see most people making use of context. Although I have a lot of tutorials on Redux, you should really try and understand context, because it's lightweight and much easier to use and will be come in handy in most applications that you'll be working on. Okay, not unless your team makes use of Redux, then context will always be kinda enough. Okay, so with that said, let me show you the app that we'll be working on. We'll be working on a simple notes app. Let it load. Here we go. So this is the app that we'll be working on. It doesn't have any logic at the moment, so I can't add a note, I can't like remove a note and so on. So I want us to add logic to this application so that we are able to display our notes. We are able to remove the notes using this X button or icon. Then we can also be able to add a note, and also we will display the number of notes that we have on our navbar. Okay, so right now we should like be displaying 3 notes dynamically. Okay, and for that we'll be needing to make use of the global state, and therefore we'll be making use of context API and the use context hook. So before we get started, let me show you around the app, because this tutorial is not about the design, it's not about the CSS, it's about the React logic. Okay, so I'll show you around. I have used styled components to design these different parts, and here we go. So this is the app that we have at the moment, the boilerplate. And if you need the code, I'll be leaving a link at the description section below. So check at the description section below for this starter code or the boilerplate of the app. Okay, and this is the app.js file, and at the app.js file you can see I'm rendering 3 components right here: the navbar, add note component where we have the form, and then the notes. So with the notes is where we also list the notes down there. And then you can see we have global styles. So I'm making use of styled components to style our app. So if you don't know anything about styled components, you can follow my channel. I have some tutorials on styled components. Okay, cool. So let us take a look at the notes to begin with. So at our notes, you can see I only have one styled component. So we have styled.div. This is just a div with some styles. And then down here, you can see we have made use of the use state hook. And in here, I have the default state. Okay, so whatever you are seeing on the UI is this data. It's an array of objects. So we have the first object, what is HTML, its description, and its ID. I'm making use of UUID to automatically generate an ID. So this is a library. You can just install it. It's called UUID. I'm importing version 4 as uuid v4. So this is just to like name it correctly, because using just v4 I wouldn't know what it is in the code. Okay, so uuid v4 makes more sense. So you can see I have some form of state. We have nodes and set nodes, use state, an array of our nodes, and then down here I am mapping through them. Okay, so I'm saying nodes and nodes dot map. We are getting a node at a time, and then I'm passing that node to our node component as a plop. So I'm passing node here to our node component as a plop, and I'm passing it as our node plop. Okay, just to avoid the confusion between node and the node component and stuff. Then we have the key as node.id. So if we take a look at the node component right here, you will see we just have a styled node, which is a wrapping div, and then we have a styled button right there, using styled components to style them. And now we have like an X icon to cancel it. So I'm receiving our node as a plop, and I'm being able to display the title and the description. And I can expand this one. These are the styles if you want to copy them, but I'll also leave a link to the source code at the description section below, so don't worry too much about it. Also for this one, if you need the styles, let me just expand it. Okay, right here. Cool. So now you have seen what we have is just an array of nodes, and I'm mapping through them, and I'm showing them on our node component right here. Very simple. Okay, now when do we need to make use of the global state? So when we come to our app right here, we need that array of nodes also to be on our navbar. So if we go to our navbar right here, you can see this is our navbar. I can expand the styles, and we need to access that array of nodes so that we can display its length right here. So we need that array of nodes both in our navbar and also in our nodes component. So we need it into different components. But now the problem is we don't have it in our navbar, we have it in our nodes. And you can see these are at the same level. They are siblings. Okay, they are not like a child of each other, they are siblings. And when they are siblings, it's hard to share data between them. So one of the solutions that we can use is what we call lifting the state. So we can take this piece of state right here, we remove it from the nodes component, and we take it to our app.js. So we can include that piece of state right here. Okay, and then when we do that, we can pass the nodes via plops to our navbar and also to our nodes. And that way we can be able now to access the nodes to our in our navbar and also in our nodes. So this process of taking the state from this point to the parent component is called lifting the state. But now the problem is if the app is so huge and we have so many components, in our app right here we'll be having a lot of data which we don't necessarily need in our app. Okay, the only reason that we might have it there is so that we can pass it via plops and make it accessible in our navbar and in our nodes. And then another problem that we'll be having is what we call props drilling. So props drilling is having a long tree of components, and we are passing the data on and on and on and on. So if we have the nodes right here, that means that we will pass it via plops to our nodes component, and then we will pass it again via plops to our node component, which is like a single node. And then in our node component, if we had another component in here which needed the data, we will need to pass it again via plops. So we have that long tree of components which we need to pass the data via plops, and that is called props drilling. So to avoid props drilling and to avoid including state in unnecessary components, that is when we make use of the global state. That is why we need the context API and the use context hook, and that is why we also make use of Redux. So let us now dive into context API and use context hook now that you understand the problem that we are having. So in our notes folder right here, I'll add a new file and I'll call this one notes context.js. So I'll say notes context.js, and in our notes context.js, we are going to import several stuff. So first of all, I'll import the create context, which is like a function in React which we can use to create a context. So right here, I'll import, I'll destructure create context. So I'll destructure create context just like that, and this will come from React. Okay, also I'll be needing the use state hook, so I'll also import use state. Okay, use state. And then another thing that I'll import in this particular component or file is the UUID. So we will be taking our notes from this particular component, from our notes component, and we will make it global. We'll take this particular data and make it global. Okay, so I'll also need this one. So I'll actually just cut it because we'll no longer need it in our notes. Okay, so in our notes context right here, I'll just paste it. Okay, and then let us create a notes context. So right here I can say export const a notes context, just like that, and this will be equal to create context, and we invoke it. So this create context usually accept a default value. So if you want, this is optional, you can actually like pass our array of notes right here as the default data. So this notes context is an object, and it usually comes with its own component called notes context.provider, and that is the component that we usually pass data to, and once we do that, that data becomes global to any component that will be subscribing to our notes context. Okay, so these terms might be confusing at the moment, but as we proceed, I'm hopeful that they'll make sense. So now right here, we are exporting one thing, notes context, and we are calling create context right there. Now we also need to export another thing, which will be our notes provider. So let's export const notes provider. Okay, notes provider, and this will be equal to actually a normal React component. So we will take props in here, and we will be able to return something. So right here, let's actually return, and whatever we will return right here, it's what we call notes context. Now this context right here, which is an object which was created by calling this particular function, and this notes context, it has a component. So that is the component that we are going to render or return right here. So right here we can say notes, for some reason it's hanging, I'll wait it to load. So notes context, and then we'll call dot provider, just like this, and I'll like close it like that. And now this provider is the one that require us to pass some form of value. So actually right here we can say value will be equal to in form of a prop. So this value is like a mandatory prop for us to pass, and actually I can just pass a string. I can say hello React. Okay, so I have passed a value of hello React, and you can see we are having two things. We have notes context and we have notes provider. So this notes provider will allow us to wrap our entire app with it. Okay, and once we do that, we will be able to access this value to whichever component that subscribed to our notes context dot provider. So let's like go to app.js right here and import our notes provider. So we need to come right here and wrap everything with that notes provider. So actually, if I just make use of it right here, I should get an auto import. So I'll say nodes provider. So I get an auto import like that, which is awesome. And then I should wrap everything. So I'll highlight that and cut that, wrap whatever we have here with our nodes provider, just like that. And now for us to make a specific component to subscribe to our nodes context, what we should do, we should be able to pass that component right here. Okay, so right here, let me pass our nodes component. So right here I can say nodes, just like this, and nodes, so it's auto imported and I can actually do that. So I'm passing it in here. So let me save. And now these nodes will have access to our value, which is really cool. So I'll come back to nodes, and actually it will throw an error because of the UUID. So let me do Control Z so that I like return that, just to avoid this error. But what I want us to do is to try and read the value right here, this value, hello React. Okay, so I'll come back to nodes, and for us to read that value, we need to make use of the useContext hook. So right here, I'll import useContext from here. So useContext, which will come from React, and then I'll also need to import these nodes context. Okay, so right here, I'll also need to import the nodes context. I'll say import. I will destructure. It's a named import nodes context, and this will come from our nodes context, which is this file right here. Okay, cool. Now to make use of the use context and the nodes context, this is how we do it. So right here, I'll say const value will be equal to, now we call our use context hook. So we usually make use of the use context hook to access the data from our nodes context. So right here, I'll make use of the use context hook, just like that. I invoke it and I pass the nodes context in here. So I'll pass nodes context, and then I'll save. And actually we can log now this value to the console. Let's log it to the console and see what we have at the console. So I can say console.log of value. So now we should see that we have the value at our console. And when we check at our app, you'll notice that we are only rendering the component that is at our nodes context right here. So we only have the nodes, and at our app, although we are including a navbar and our node, they are not being rendered because we wrapped our app with our nodes provider, but we are not passing the components right here. So if we just wanted the state to be just at our nodes, we should just like come right here, and we can just wrap only the nodes with the nodes provider, just like this, just like that. And we should now see the navbar and the R node, and we should still have our nodes. So let's see what we have. So now we are seeing everything, and now when I refresh right here, you will see that we are logging hello React at our console. And whenever now we change the value of our context, our nodes will automatically re-render when this value changed. Maybe hello React and JS. So when I save that, we should now see that we have that particular string at our console. So when I save it, it should automatically render without refreshing. We have hello React and JS, which is really awesome. So we have that piece of state in our nodes right here. Okay, but we want the state to be accessible from any other component, and that is why we had previously wrapped everything with our nodes provider. So I'll go to the previous version that we had, just like this, and I'll save that. And now you should include all the components that are in here at our nodes context right here. And the easiest way to do this is by using props. So right here we can just receive props, and okay, it's kind of hanging. Okay, after receiving props, we can just like render the components or the child component using the props. So we can just say props dot children. So right here we can say props dot children, and that will do it. So we are automatically rendering all the child components right here. And now I can just remove this one, and now when I save, this value will now be accessible from any other component in our app when we make use of the use context hook and our nodes context. So when I save that and we check our app, we should still be logging this at the console. So let's refresh to make sure that that is working. And there we go, and we are still seeing all our other components. Okay, and that is why we make use of the nodes provider to like help us pass the value to any other props or child components. Okay, like to pass the value to any other child component for our nodes provider. But still we haven't solved our problem. We want to have access to the nodes right here and set nodes. So all we need to do is to remove this piece of code. I'll cut it and I'll include it in our nodes provider component. Remember, this is just a normal React component, and I can just include it right here. And I'll still be making use of the use state. And now I want to have access to nodes and set nodes. So I can just like copy that, and instead of passing a string, I'll pass this array of nodes and set nodes. So I'm passing both the array of our nodes and a method which we can use to update our nodes, which is really awesome. So now when I save that and come back to nodes right here, and how can we access the values? So now the values will be available right here in our value in form of an array. That array has the array of nodes, and it has that method for updating our nodes. Okay, but at the moment these nodes will actually like complain that we are not having nodes. So maybe what I can do, I can just like comment it out and let me save and see what we have at our value. So I'll come back, and you can see we are logging an array at the console, and this array has the list of our nodes, and then it has a function which we can use to update this list, and then it has a length property, which is awesome. So we can make use of now these particular properties, and this is how we can actually like destructure them. So right here I can use the square brackets, and I can access the nodes and set nodes normally as we do with the use state. Okay, so you can like make use of use context right here the same way like we make use of the use state. So now right here I can just remove this one, and now we have access to nodes and we have access to set nodes as we had previously. So I can uncomment that and save that. So this should not complain, and we should be able to render our nodes on the console. So when I come right here, actually we should be able to render our nodes at our UI, not the console, sorry. So we can be able to see the nodes on the UI. And when we change the state, the value of our state, let's say we change JavaScript right here to, let's say, React, we should be able to render that at our UI. So let's say what is React, and I include a question mark and save. Now this should automatically render our app, and we are automatically seeing the changes on the UI. So we are properly subscribed to our nodes context and the value right here, and the value is this particular value right here. We are passing the nodes and a method which we can use to update the nodes. And also you can see we are making use of the use state right here. So this is actually very powerful because now this data is available globally, and now we can go to our navbar and we can have access to all this data and maybe show the number of notes that we have on the UI. So I'll go to the navbar, and from here we can import. Actually, I'll come back to notes right here, and we should import our use context and also the notes context right here. So I'll copy notes context and I'll come to the navbar and I'll paste notes context, and then I will just import the use context. So I'll come back to notes again, and actually, since I'm not using the use state, I'll remove it. I'm no longer using this UID right here. Remove it just to make it a bit cleaner. And then I'll copy the use context hook and save that file actually. Then I'll come to the navbar and I'll make sure that I import the use context hook from React. And how can we now access that global state from here? We just need to come just before the return statement. We can make use of the use context hook. And whenever we call it like this with our notes context, so we are subscribing to the notes context right here. Right here, we will have a return of the value of our notes context, okay? And the value is our notes and set notes. So I'll say const, and then right here I'll say notes, and then a comma, set notes. And now since I have the access to notes right here, I can use its length just like this. I can say notes dot length. And since this is JSX, I should include the curly brackets like this. And to safely load the notes, we can perform a simple check. We can say notes end notes dot length. And this should give us the length of our notes, or how many notes we have at our state. So I'll save that and let's see what we get at our UI. So right here we should get 3 notes, okay? But we have an issue, module not found. Yeah, so we should like include double dots right here, and then we are getting out of this folder at our navbar. We go inside our notes, so we go inside our notes, and then now we access the notes context. So that is the proper way of loading the notes context. I'll save that and let's see if it's working. And there we go, it's working. Okay, we still have the error. Oops. Yeah, we should include this trash right here this way. So I'll save that now, and hopefully I haven't lied to you again. And there we go, so it's working now. So now we have 3 nodes right here, and you can see now this state is global. We can easily access it at our navbar, we can easily access it at our nodes component, and also we can easily access it at our add node component. So first of all, let's handle this one, removing a node. Let's see how we can remove a node. Okay, so to remove a node, we need to go to the node right here, and right here we will create a handler and we will fire it on click. Okay, so what we will have is const handle delete and I'll set this one to be equal to an arrow function which will receive the ID of a node. So it will receive the ID of a node, and we will be able to do something in here. But for now, let's hook it up to our styled button. So I'm using styled components again to style our everything. So right here, we can have an on-click event. So I'll say on-click. Let us call our handle delete, and I'm using another function here since we'll be passing an ID to our handle delete. So right here, I invoke handle delete and I pass our node dot id. So that our node dot id, we receive it right here as the id, and then we can make use of this id to exclude a node from our array. So I'll be making use of the filter method. So right here I can say nodes, and that means that we should be having our entire nodes. So for us to have the entire notes, we need to import the context API and the use context hook. So right here, let me just make use of use context, and then I'll automatically get a suggestion to auto import it. So I'll import use context, and then I'll subscribe to the notes context, and now this should return it should return our notes and set notes. Okay, so right here we should have notes, and also we should have set notes, just like that. And now this state is global. We can easily access it in this particular component without doing what we call props drilling. Okay, cool. So now we have two pieces of notes. We have this notes, and we have this our note, which is coming down via props, and this one is from the global state. So now right here, I'm making use of these notes from the global state, and then I'm saying dot filter, just like that, dot filter, and right here we will get a note at a time, and then we can be able to perform a check. Now how the filter method works is that when whatever check that we perform here, when it returns true, this note will be like returned to the new array that will be forming right here. So this notes.filter will return an array, and it determines the elements to add in that array by a check right here. When that check is true, an element is pushed to that particular array. So right here, let's actually say const new notes will be equal to notes.filter, and then we have a note at a time, and then we can perform a check. So if the check returns true, then we can push whatever we have right here to this particular new array. So for example, if we say notes, okay, actually not notes, note, this particular note right here, dot id is equals to our id right here. So this is the ID that comes down via props, and then this is the note ID from our array of nodes from the global state. So when we do this, only one node will be equal to this particular ID, okay? And that means that only that one node will return true, and only that one node will be added to our new nodes, okay? So only we will, in our array right here, we'll only have one thing. We'll only have one node. So if right here I say console.log of new nodes, actually this is just JavaScript, you should be knowing it, and we call new nodes right here and save. When we do this, we will only get the node that we click right here at our new array. So let me show you how that will come along. So let's refresh, and we should only see an array of one node at the console when I click the X button. So let's click what is CSS. I will click, and now there we go. We have a new array right here. And when you check at it, we only have one element of whatever we have clicked, okay? What is CSS? Now, what we want is the opposite. We want to exclude this from the array. So we will do the opposite of what we have done. So we will say note.id not equal to the ID here, okay? And what that will do is that it will exclude only that note that we click, because it will return false right here. Since it's true, since the IDs are equal, instead of returning true, it will return false because we have included this particular check. And then the other notes ID, since they are not equal to this particular ID, they return true. That means that they'll be pushed to our new notes right here, okay? So let's see now what we have. So we should now be having the other notes instead of the note that we click. So right here, actually, I hope it will work out. So let's try with what is, actually let me refresh to refresh everything and see. So let's exclude what is HTML, and now we should be having an array of what is CSS and what is React. So I'll click that, and now look, we have two items, the what is CSS and what is React. So we don't have what is HTML, which is really cool. So now we can make use of these new nodes to update our notes right here by just calling set notes. Okay, so now instead of logging the new notes to the console, we can call set notes, and I invoke this one and I pass new notes. Since now this is our new list of notes without the note that we have clicked, we have deleted, that is. Okay, so I'll save that, and now when I come back right here, I refresh, and let's try to delete what is CSS, and it's gone. Awesome. And so far, actually, we have covered the context API stuff. We have seen how we can like include the state in global state. So right here at our nodes context, we just created two things: the nodes context and the nodes provider. And then inside the nodes provider, we were returning nodes context dot provider and passing this value, and this value will be accessible to any component that will be passing in here. Okay, and in this case, we are passing all the components to have access to our global state. Okay, cool. Now let me show you how to add a node, just to help you cement on how to access at the global state and how to manipulate it. So here this will be a bit of a workout. Let me show you the styles. These are the styles um, for the form. This is all we have. But for us to now access the nodes context and the use context hook, we have to import them. So I'll import use context and the nodes context, and then in our add node, I'll just come right here and paste them here. And then now down here, we can work on our form. So first of all, we can include state to store the input for our title and the input for the description. So just before our return statement, we can make use of the use state hook. So we should actually import it from React. So I'll also import use state, and this will store the local state for this particular form. Okay, so you can still use the local state. Okay, now right here I'll have a const, and I'll have title and set title, and this will be equal to set state, and I invoke this, and the default value will be just an empty string. And then let's have the description. So I can just duplicate this one, and we'll have this one as a desk. So I'll say desk, and then right here I'll say set desk. That makes sense. And here we should have a comma. That's why it's underlining. So cool. Now we have two piece of state for these two type of inputs. So the first one right here, we can set the value to be title. So this is now a controlled input. So the value right here will be title, and on change we will call set title. Okay, so right here we can have an on change event on change. I'll call the curly brackets like this, and then I can pass an arrow function, and this arrow function will have access to the E, so it will have access to the event here. And now we can call a set title. I know the code is a bit messed up here, not readable, but when I save it should auto format. So first of all, let me complete this one. We set title to, I invoke it, and we'll set it to e.target.value. So that will take the value from the event. So I'll save that actually. So it's auto formatted this way, which is more readable. Let me just copy paste this one. So I'll copy that and paste it here. Let me save to auto format, but make sure to update the value here to desk, and set title to set desk. Okay, so yeah, pretty nice. Now we are already receiving those two states in title and desk, which is awesome. And then when we click this button, we are automatically submitting the form. So right here we can handle on submit. So on submit, let us call under submit. So we will call under submit, and we don't yet have this particular function, so let's create it. So right here I'll create under submit, and I'll set it to be equal to an arrow function. Arrow functions are just awesome. And let's prevent the default behavior of a form. So I'll say e.prevent default, and we make sure that we fire that or invoke it or call it. We have many names to use here. So e.prevent default, and then now down here we can be able to update our list of notes using the title and set and the description, that is okay. So now right here, let's access the global state, and for the global state we are making use of the use context. So I'll call use context, I'll fire it, and I'll pass the context right here. That is the context. Okay, the notes context. So I'll pass notes context, and then this should return our notes and set notes. So this will return right here our notes, which are now global here, and set notes. Okay, cool. Now we can make use of this title and the description, and we add it to our notes right here, which is pretty nice. So right here I can just call set notes, and I invoke it. And now what I can do is that this should be an array, right? So it is an array in here, and this array should be having all our notes, and then we add a particular note at the end. So you can spread like this, you spread the notes, and then comma, and then you add another object right here, and now this object will be having the title and the description. So right here you can just set the title to be title. So that is the key and the value, and then you will set the description, that is desk, to be desk, and also we should be having an ID. So you can set the ID to be, now in this case we'll make use of the UUID. So I'll come to notes context, copy this one, and then come back right here to add note, make sure that I import it, and now down here I can make use of the UUID for UUID version 4. I invoke it, so it will automatically add an ID for us. And now when I save, we should be able to add that particular note to our array of notes and see it on the UI, since we are updating this state. Okay, so now I'll come back right here, and set note, set state is not defined, so we have a lot of mess actually. So this is actually const note, and actually I think it auto formatted to this because of my own mess, so we should have that. And this is not set state, so this is use state. Yeah, I'm sure you are laughing at me when I was making these mistakes. Sorry. So I'll save that, and now we shouldn't be having those errors. Let's see. Yeah, E is not defined at line 41. So let's go to line 41. So we are receiving the event right here and calling it right here. Okay, so I'll save that, and now that one should be gone. There we go. Cool. And when I refresh, we no longer have the errors. Okay, we can like delete what is CSS. Cool. And we can add our own node. So let's say what is node, just some simple nodes right here. you can say node is, so yeah, node is JS runtime environment. Runtime, I'm not sure whether it's one word. Runtime and okay, I'm busy typing runtime environment. When we add note, it's added at the end here. Pretty cool. But now you can notice that this data is only available in the state. It's not saved on the database or anything or local storage, so it is volatile. When I refresh, we'll have our default notes and our new note is gone. So we can still do this, okay, and add the note, and it's added down here. So this is working. The adding a note is working, and that is how we can actually do it. And if you want, you can actually like save it to the database, take the new list of notes, save it to the database and stuff, okay. But now when you read React well, you'll notice that they don't actually recommend this. The recommended way of doing an update, what I'll do, I'll just like cut this one. The recommended way of updating a list of an array is this way. So right here we have access to previous note, so the immediate previous version of our notes, and then we can update it right here. So right here we have access to the previous notes. So we have previous, this is just a variable, but it makes more sense when we call it this way, previous notes. And this is the previous, just the immediate previous version of our notes, and we can use these previous notes to update the state right here. So right here we can spread the previous notes just the same way that like we did before, only that now we are using the best practice in React. Okay, so now right here you'll use a comma and pass the object right here. When I save, this is what we have. We are returning an array of previous notes. This will be the immediate previous version, and we are adding our new piece of state. So when we save that, this should also work. So let me refresh and see if it works. So let's add a new note, just some dummy text, add, and it's added, remove, and it's removed. So yeah, this is cool. We have made use of the context API and the use context to create some global state which we can easily access from any other component, just like that. And we have made some practice. We have used some real world examples. So this is very awesome. If this video was helpful, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, and also let me know what you think about the video at the comment section below, and recommend to me which video you want to see next about React. Okay, so I'll see you on the next one.